Welcome back to the coffee show, everyone. Exciting interview today. First remote podcast that I'm doing. And my guest is over in Las Vegas. It is Mason Salisbury of Luminous Coffee. Welcome to the coffee show, Mason.
Well, thank you for having me. It's glad to see you. I'm here actually in person after seeing all these videos you do. I get to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, I've been following you for some time, and I think we've been messaging on and off for a few months, and obviously massive fan of what you do. I really want to go to Las Vegas. Obviously, there's the craziness of Vegas, but I'm actually a massive fight fan, and all of the best fights, whether it's boxing or MMA, it's all done in Vegas. So what's it like living there?
You're asking the wrong person. I'm a Kermit. I'm a hyperfixated person, but living here is much more, I don't know. I've traveled almost every state except for like 5 states in the US, and it is probably the most easy to navigate financially, daily, nightly. You just have so many opportunities. But I would say food is one of the biggest things that people sleep on, and I mean off the strip food. There's just such an abundant amount. We don't have a lot of culture in hyper-focused specialty, but in like more Asian, India, any kind of other foods, really good in. But like when you're looking for stuff here, that's what I focus on more is the food, and then just like the dollar to dollar ratio. So like I can be in the industry and not thrive, but like keep going in it in this state compared to others where I'd be underwater. I wouldn't be able to do what we would have.
It's really interesting looking from Australia, because in Australia, obviously, it's a country of 28 million people. And I think, what's the US now? How many people do you have?
I have no idea.
Well, it's close to like 300 million or something, I'm pretty sure. But
definitely around there.
But it's like you've got 50 capital cities essentially, and we've got like 2 major cities in Australia, Sydney and Melbourne, and like they're the 2 biggest. But they're eclipsed by a lot of the cities in the US. So like the size of the economy is just massive. The size of the country is massive, and then all the states. Like I'm hoping I can come to the US this year in October, and if so, I'll be paying you a visit.
Well, 2 things. You'll have to reach out to, I think it's Chris, one of the owners of Say. You have to reach out to him. I know he's does UFC stuff. So I don't know if he still does that or part of it, but that was the last person I know in coffee that's really connected to UFC. I don't know anything about UFC or any of that fighting stuff. I just know I drive by the UFC headquarters every day here. That's about it for me.
Well, even that I'm jealous of, because like I just love everything about it. It's gruesome. It's a gruesome sport. I will admit that, but I do love it. So introduce a bit about yourself and Luminous Coffee, because you said you're a Kermit, so I'm sure you're glued to your roastery in your home. So introduce a bit of yourself and then Luminous Coffee.
Yeah, so most people, if you're in the industry, you've probably chatted with me or no, but if not, my name is Mason Salisbury. I am one of the co-owners of Luminous Coffee. It's owned by me and my partner, Lexus. She's the other half of it, which is somewhere on this wall, also in a relationship too. So that's why I mean like partner and in a relationship. But so basically I've been in coffee since, I would say like August 2009. So like before scales were like, you just went by like blonding of espresso, you know what I mean? Like you watched the Dave Schumer DVD, like Baby Barista, you went out on the bar, stuff like that stuff. From there though, I kind of stayed at one company here in Vegas, learned as much as I could, not from there, but more in just like throwing myself into kind of different areas, from like tech work to roasting, other stuff. From there, I actually originally did Luminous in 2014. End of it. This was a whole different picture of what we were going to do. And I became friends with someone who was really connected in the industry. His name's Cole McBride. He taught me a lot about the industry, in good or bad, and learned a lot from that perspective.
He's a former United States barista champion, is he not?
Yeah. He definitely was a solid person, but I just talk more industry stuff. Perspective-wise, give me a lot of reasons of why I never want to compete. You know what I mean? Or at least when I have gray hair, maybe that'll make it fun. But no reason for another white dude to be in coffee talking about the love story of coffee. Like, leave it for someone, you know? So he gave me a lot about that. around 2016, 17, I actually went into, the only way you grow in this industry is just by saying, yeah, I can do that. I know how to do it. So I was looking at buying a used roaster to flip it, like refurb it, flip it. So like a UG, stuff like that, and flip it. And I found a job ad for some kind of weird tech consulting service that this guy was starting up. And basically did that as a third party for Loring and for other roasters. So from there, I was traveling maybe 85% of the year. I've been in too many roasteries. I can't even name them. But traveling and setting up roast facilities. I set up all the Loring's and Blue Bottles facility in Sacramento. I've worked with Stumptown. Say any roaster you can think of, I've probably in some way worked with them, either teaching a roaster, a production roaster, setting up the facility, or just doing actually grunt work of like tech work. From there, around 2018, Lexus brought back the idea to do Luminous. She just brought it up. She was like, hey, what if we do a coffee company? I was like, I don't know what I want to do. Like a shop? I don't want to do a coffee shop. And she's like, no, let's bring it back. So we did catering and just kind of funded the whole idea. And from there, basically made this Luminous, and that's kind of where we're at. There's a lot more in between it, but I'm just an industry person. I'm just a Swiss Army knife. I've learned a lot from a lot of people and had a lot of privilege.
What's the reason behind the name Luminous?
So originally the name behind it in 2014, 15 was kind of just like enlightening. It was like that old symbolic kind of way of you put a word and you put a brand through it. And it was all like romantic goth kind of like gold and classy style. That was how we thought it. But Luminous now is much more just a feeling. It is just an approach. It's more than just like the word. It really just identifies more, like just always growing, always learning, brightness, stuff like that. But I haven't really thought about what is luminous, like the word of it, as much anymore. It's kind of just like the word. I don't know how to explain it.
I feel like with what I know about you and Luminous, like it encapsulates you quite well. Like I'm looking at the background of your setting now. You've got a pink and sky blue Typhoon roaster, which we'll touch on later. Then you've got the wall painted and your hair's dyed blonde, and I feel like
an extra person. I am that mentality.
Stay extra. I saw on your back wall before as well, so we'll definitely touch on that. We're going to walk through today, so obviously a bit more about Luminous. Talk some instant coffee. You're a big time instant coffee guy by the looks of things. Branding, bit of retail and why selling direct to consumer is cool. Some roasting, and then selling coffee to the Middle East as well. But I want to start on something that's probably disproportionately affected US coffee roasters and coffee clientele, and that's tariffs. Because, I mean, the way they're sort of discussed in the American media, particularly by Donald Trump, is that it's like it's this good thing, but actually they're paid by US businesses. So it's like, it's not, even though it brings in revenue, it's like it's a lot of small businesses paying tariffs. It's big companies, and, there's an inflationary effect. And as of today, it's 1st of July in Australia right now, so 30th of June for you. So the expiry date for the tariffs exemption, I guess, is coming to a head. So they could be reinstated in the next few days. Give us some of the thoughts as a coffee roaster in the US about the tariffs and, how they affect you, and I guess what it could mean going forward if they're reinstated.
Yeah, so I think two sides to this. One, the scale side, and two, the reality. Like me, I live in the hyper-focus alley, so most of the coffees we buy are above minimum 36 a kilo. Like that's our daily drivers in a sense. So it affects me much more disproportionately than like a scale roaster that I help friends with, and I help people buy containers and stuff. So it does affect them, but more throughout time, not immediate. It's a little different. I would think right now the biggest thing that I'm looking at is overabundantly having inventory. So if that's packaging, if that's green coffee, just having it now. The only downside of this, we live within, whoever is watching, a tyrant in a sense. Like it could flip tomorrow. DHL could send you a message, FedEx will email you or send you some bills in like 2 months saying, hey, you owe all these tariffs. So I don't know. Like, do you plan ahead and just order up now tons of stuff? But then what happens by the time it's ready to say harvest, ship? I don't know. I'm trying to at this moment slide my way through everything without affecting me, because if it's affecting me, a little business, maybe to others it seems big, but if it's down to me, I've always thought, damn, it's really affecting everyone. Because tariffs don't affect me as much, because we don't raise our prices. Our prices have always been built 5 years ago, so we won't raise our prices. Our green sits in a different alley than others, so it's disproportional to the people that walk to the bottom, if that makes sense, like wholesale and stuff like that. So for me, it doesn't really affect our consumers, but it does affect how I go about things. Like right now, we just started a new subscription with tin cans, and I'm scared shitless, because I was talking and I was listening to podcasts, and I was like, the biggest thing for, big companies when they scale is they plan out their packaging way ahead of time, because what happens when you get to those crazy amount of volume of scale, I need to have 3 pallets of tins. That's like, 10, 15,000 tins. That's only going to last me, let's say, a half a year or whatever for this one product. Well, how do I scale it? Do I overly order and then I don't make any profit to support anything till like the 5th or 6th part of the year? I don't know. So it's a weird part. So tariffs right now, I'm trying, and I just cross my fingers, and every day I either get hit with one or I get lucky and get past. That's where I'm at.
But I guess the thing is, like, it's somewhat complex in the way that, like, the way it's being applied to different countries is very arbitrary. So, for example, I think the first example of it that I recall was Colombia getting some tariffs slapped on because they wouldn't accept deportations or something like that. And then, obviously there was blanket tariffs put on effectively everyone in the world. Australia got 10% tariffs. I think some of the South American countries got 10% tariffs, and which as a business, I guess you could eat that. It sucks. It's annoying, but you can manage it. But then there's like, China, which a lot of people would get their packaging and things like that from. And then it just escalates to, I think it got to what, 145% tariff rate?
It's 195, because you got to think about this. The increases, there were already tariffs on things. Now there were 2 types. There was like a undervalue of, I think it was like it was $2,400. So there was like a high limit. So a lot of us never even noticed there were real tariffs, because our value of our goods, maybe if you're shipping, were low. So you want to get it. And also there's just so many ways to work around it. Like I always got away from tariffs because it's samples. It's, or it's air freighted through a certain party, if you go through sea shipping, it may go through one port, get onto another ship, and then come to you. So you kind of like have this weird triangle. But in reality, it's stupid, because like most of it is manufacturing. You just find me a bag company in the USA that can do what is expected to keep competitive against others. If I did my box in America, they would laugh at me. They would laugh. They would say, you need a minimum of 50 to 70,000. Oh, and you want embossing and spot UV? Nope. Holographic? Nope. Best we can do is like a foil stamp, gold or silver. That's it. But that shit would cost like maybe like $2 a box, $1 a box for all that stuff. And they wouldn't take you off their manufacturing schedule, because they're doing bigger clients that are bigger and better. So, and there's a lot of companies that are based in the US, and they like technically just order from somewhere else, in Thailand, Vietnam, so many different countries. We used to get where did we used to get our packaging? I have to think about it, but we didn't get it in any Asian country. So it was a little weird, but now it's just like, I have no idea. I've worked with the same manufacturer for like 5-6 years. I'm not moving. It's that relationship, and to get to that point is too precious to me. I won't be.
But I think that there's an element about like sort of Chinese made products where I think, maybe 10, 15 years ago, people thought of them as cheap and, lower quality. But nowadays they kind of, like you're mentioning, they have those expertise in producing things, and actually the quality is really high. So you look at something like a BYD electric vehicle. I drove in one, I was in one, in an Uber the other day, and it was perfectly fine. Like, it was very good, very comfortable, very high quality. A lot of the packaging you get, you're saying like, You can just get it at a high quality, and they have the expertise, the capacity, and they just deliver.
It's good at it. I don't know. I'm not one of those people. I've never gone and been like, hey, what is I need cheapest kind of things. But yeah, I don't know. I worry more not about, I don't know. It's just a weird thing. I'm a really big relationship person. So once I say I work with you, and the company manufacturers we work with, I work with about 5 packaging manufacturers since I do instant and tin cans. So I have to kind of like route everything. The only problem is I don't have backups. And I can find one pretty easily. I have enough experience now. Like I do all our die lines, I do all the sourcing. Like I said, Swiss Army knife. So I'm not too worried. It's just the fact that when you put in an order, you're an operating business. So if you're running out of supply and that packaging comes and maybe their tolerance is instead of 5 millimeters, it's like 6 or something, or you see the spot UV not line up with all the packaging, or who knows, that really affects an operating business. And that's kind of how I think about things. It's like, I'm operating, I can't afford to mess up. So I don't know, tariffs right now, I just stopped. I've stopped thinking about it. Like the most I can do is just, like I said, just fingers crossed. And
Well, the justification for them is quite trivial, I guess you could say, because like the example for Australia is that we don't buy US beef. And in Australia, like obviously we're a continent and a country, and we've got very strict biosecurity laws for good reason, because protecting our environment and all that sort of thing. But and we produce some of the world's best beef. So I can't think of any example of why an Australian would want to buy US beef.
I have no idea how that all works. Some of the stuff I'm just learning. There are things I feel like no one could have ever known, and they would have probably been better off. And now we're at the point of like over learning information we don't know about. I have no idea agriculture. Coffee, I know, but now everyone's learning about the coffee kind of industry and agriculture, of how that things work. And it's like, how are we're going to grow it? What is it? Jason Mraz or whatever is his freaking farm? Like, we're going to go buy coffee from there? Like that's, like, we're not growing coffee. Why are we being tariffed on something? Why do we need to sell? I don't know. It's a really weird thing. And if someone doesn't want to buy your coffee, we're unfortunately under this dumb kind of political thing where it's like, if you don't want it, we're going to make you buy it. So we're going to set you up with tariffs. So you have to buy it. And it's either political on this side, or it's just to stay face as like this dumb US 4-year term, which in my opinion, it's 4 years. 3 more years of this diabolical kind of thing, and hopefully it doesn't. It just like we just get back better. But it's a weird moment right now in time, and it feels like 2016 all over again, but worse.
Yeah, well, it's certainly interesting to watch from abroad. Let me just say it like that, because I mean, in Australia, the politicians are so bruise free. Like they don't do really anything that, I guess, shakes the box in any way. Like I feel like Biden kind of operated in a bruise-free kind of manner in a lot of ways, but then obviously Trump's just like, he's definitely a populist leader with far more radical policies and ways of looking at things. So it's interesting to watch from outside.
I definitely, it's a TV show right now. Like it is literally but it is affecting millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people in a negative way. And I think for us in the coffee industry, it affects us the worst, because we are the worst. Like we're the lower of it. We live in this fast food kind of thought process of coffee, and it's low, underpaid and all that stuff. So you just imagine it as you get down to like farm level and even lower. It just affects so many people. But I don't know. I think the tariffs, I'm hoping it's coming to an end. Usually, like he already made his money from it personally. So I only can assume like he's just backtracking till forgetful and it will go away. But yeah, we are at the point, but I think he's just going to extend it. I think it's just going to be extended. It makes the most sense. It's not going to go back up unless it's to do some other blowback to cover up. I just couldn't see the benefit, because right now it's not small businesses paying tariffs. It's every American paying tariffs, plus the people outside too, in a sense, because now they're losing demand. People aren't wanting to buy as much packaging, stuff like that, or green coffee or food.
Well, you said something really interesting to me. We jumped on a call earlier just to test all this stuff and organize this. But you said something to me earlier about what you think the angle of it is. So could you say that again?
I think the angle right now, I can't even remember what I was saying, but I like the angle right now just seems like for capitalism. So if you think about it, the biggest businesses can outweigh this storm like easily. You may think like they're the first to get rocked. Nah, they're good. They make billions in gross profit for their boards and everything. And they're always making money. It's like the subway effect. You have tons of it, it makes money. But the problem with small businesses, we operate off of a backtrack. It's like roasting on a Gießen or a UG. You're roasting ahead of time, but you're operating off of a moment before. So like you can't just spend money. You live on that money. Your paycheck to business. There's very few businesses that are actually above that 28-30% profit margin. And so I think they're just trying to easel it out or like weasel it out so that small businesses get hurt the most. So what happens is there's more people to the workforce, which means they don't need to pay more because there's more people that need to work. It makes most sense, but what do I know? I'm just a random person, but it makes the most sense because it helps big businesses with their biggest issue, which is labor and workforce. And AI is not going to solve that because there's still humans, and humans will always be cheaper than AI. And that's how they look at us, is a dollar. So for specialty world, luckily, people have a little bit better ethics and morals, hopefully, and are learning. So they appreciate the value of human and why you pay it. But I think for the others, the tariffs help the bigger businesses than it helps the small. So that's what my opinion is on it. I think it's dumb to tariff. It just doesn't make sense. Free trade makes sense. I hate capitalism. Like our business is technically anti-capitalism. We sell 4 days a week or 4 days a month. So I like to sell as much as I need to keep going. I'm not here to drive an AMG, be crazy. Same thing with tariffs. I think you don't need to pay it. We already pay it in taxes, multiple taxes. That's either, paying payroll, paying, city, state, federal. There's some county taxes, so many fucking taxes. And it's like this tariff. I'm just like, who's giving me my money back? Tariff down like a week later, and I got hit with 145% tariff on like packaging. And I spent like, what, $3 or $4 grand? I've spent a little under 10 grand on tariffs, but tariffs hurt, I think, the hyper-focused industry, or, whatever people want to call it these days. But like the people that are a little bit more top-heavy with their cost of goods, because you're using less units. Like my coffee, say it cost 100 a kilo, that's a lot, but I only got 100 kilos of it. Or let's just say that's a lot of money for a 10% tariff on coffee. Now, if you get like a pallet of coffee and it's, $5.20 or $4.13 a kilo or something, it's not that big a deal unless you were selling it to one person all at once. So I don't know. It's definitely sucks as you're trying to focus on quality. So like I said, I think it's going to change sooner than later. But I think once the government knows they can tax us, they ain't stopping taxing us. Look at every tariff in time. They don't go away because tariffs aren't for countries. They're for the population buying it.
Mm. Yeah, well, it's look, it's certainly interesting. And I kind of feel like that capitalism, for the Western world at least, it's reached its limits for prosperity. We're always told, like, I'm definitely not a socialist, I'll put that out there, but like I fear wealth's becoming more and more concentrated in every country. Like inflation's affected every country. I think house prices everywhere in the world. Australia is a particularly extreme example that like a lot of Australian money is tied up in housing and not like investing in stock markets or businesses or anything like that. So, but like the value is just crazy. The most of my generation will never be able to afford to buy a house because the average.
So I'm not laughing at you. It's sad. It's like really sad. It's.
Oh well, it really can only go one way. I don't see it going anywhere else. But that's just how it is these days, and we just got to work around it, I guess. But
a good thing we're in coffee. So I always tell people, what gets people always ask, why do you must have a lot of passion. I always say it's trauma. trauma is what gets us. So at least we're in coffee industry. So we have enough trauma, or we know how far to the bottom it is, that I guess we're just going to have to keep working until I'm going to keel over behind the roaster. And, as long as I can, support our household, I don't really care. I'm grateful enough. I like doing what I do. This is my hobby, but I would like to buy a house one day.
Yeah, no, so would I. But I'm like you. I'm in this till the death. Let's get on to some coffee stuff now. You're in a very flamboyant, colorful roastery, and in my communications with you, you are definitely like it seems like you're addicted to what you do, and you're just so relentless about quality. I'll start off by asking you, can you explain to us how it is that you operate? Because you were saying before you open the web store for like 4 days of the month. So how do you actually operate?
So I'll run it by, just like I've told everyone. So we operate 24 hours a week. We operate every Friday for 24 hours. So that makes sense. So we open at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in the US. Okay. We give early access. So we send a password, we send a text, and then the Loomies, they get to get in there before most things sell out, or maybe there's some extra freebies in it. We're not a big person on discounts or free shipping and shit like that, because it's better value to give a product than to try to compete with Amazon and big companies. But yeah, and then from there at 1 p.m., we are open to the world. There's no password on our website. You can just order. But it closes the next day at 1 p.m. And we've been doing that commitment for 6 years. So we didn't start. We started our first year in 2019, June. Every 2 weeks we were doing it. We finished that year in with $25,000. 6 months, 25,000. That was it. But basically, from there, it kind of went up to scale, and we start. But the only way this whole thing works, I'm going to be honest with you, they always say the worst business model is the one where it takes one person to operate it if you can't leave. And I feel like that's my sometimes the biggest problem, but sometimes the best thing about it. But two is, we're at a point now where we're basically scaling it, but we're trying to figure it out. So I don't know. And then we have a subscription once a month. So 5 business days technically, if you were to think about it. But just imagine that. Rent is due, green is due. You got like $10,000 invoice of green, packaging, all this. And you haven't made money till your 3rd or 4th drop store. Commitment is the biggest thing for Luminous. If we didn't commit, the value wouldn't be there. Our model is based off of the clothing industry and some of very pop-up style food stuff from early 2000s. I just felt like it was the best way for coffee if we were to focus on, one, appreciating the cost, the experience you put into it, from the roasting, the packaging, all that kind of whatever stuff. Second, how do you appreciate the producers? You're not just, farmers you can't just say pay more for green. You should pay more for green by buying nicer green, but no one's taking free hand-me-outs. Relationships is how it starts, and commitment, not working on the bottom. So how do we pay people more? How do we do all that? How do we make a livable wage? And how do we make infrastructure in here where when we bring on people, partners, not I hate saying employees, so partners, because that's how I view it, and that's how I want to kind of put my infrastructures. How do they have somewhere to go do entrepreneurship? Is it the canning line, our cold brew canning? Is it instant? Is it part of the drop store? Is it the subscription part? Is it when we start focusing on retail experience storefronts? So Luminous is a weird model. It is one of one. I can definitely say that. There have been many people that have copied us. The only difference is I'm okay being poor. I started in coffee at $6 an hour. Lexus, we have a kid now, but I'm okay because I know time will equal the commitment. As long as we're giving our Loomies an experience and a value and never messing up on consistency, then as time goes, that word of mouth will just kind of monopolize, multiply in a sense, meaning you're going to get 2, 3, 4 and stuff like that. So we're at that point now where, you may look at all this stuff here and be like, damn, that's alluring. That's $100,000 roaster. That's 60, whatever, all the instant, and be like, oh, they must make tons of money. No, I do consulting on the side, and I would put all my money back into it. And we have no SBA loans. So every drop store is how we do this. But it's not something if you don't have a plan, you don't have a mission, you shouldn't do this business model. You shouldn't even try to, because it won't work unless you're coming at it with monopoly of money or, in a sense, celebrity.
Why do you keep going in the way that you do? Because, you mentioned before, the throwaway line about trauma, I do this because I love it. But like, what is the end goal of Mason Salisbury?
I don't know. I just want to know. I always was told in coffee one thing. And when traveling and with owners and people are always very transparent with me. I think it's because I am very bashful and transparent too with how I talk, and people open up. But every owner would be like, I wish I did this. This is the worst part of the business. This. Oh, this person does an amazing job. And I'm just like, I'd do it, But the downside is once you start a business model, you can't change. You start a cafe, you may think you're changing, but 60% of your customer base came in for that one reason for you. So are you committed to doing it? For me, though, I continue to this because I have a 100-year plan. I want Luminous to survive for 100 years. It doesn't matter if when our next generation, Atlas, if he wants to do this, hopefully, if it turns into a candy business, a bookstore, I don't care. I just want the values of what we extrude to be a part of it, which is never sacrificing quality, details, and intentions. And biggest of all, being transparent, as a human being, because your business, you represent your business. So for me, what keeps me going is just, I need to do better. I like every time I look at things, I'm just like, I can do better.
What are some of the extremes you've gone to uphold this quality? Because I used to do this business called Sub-Zero Coffee, where I froze coffee and served it.
I've heard of it. I know it. I don't.
And there's some extreme, stupid lengths that I've never told publicly to make sure that people got that coffee and it tasted good. Like even with this podcast, like I've had things go wrong behind the scenes where I'm like, I will die, doing this, like to the death, this is happening. And you strike me as someone that's probably had some extremes happen to you. So can you share one or two where it's just like, that's obscene?
So I'll use two things. One for my personality trait. One, I am a person that treats everything like it's mine, which is the worst thing when you work for people, because they take advantage of you. So my previous job was traveling and consulting. So I leave Red Hook, Brooklyn. We're going to use a real story and not a real story. I won't use names. I work for a client who has a horseshoe, okay? The biggest company in America, okay? I go to their roastery. I'm doing tech work. I'm also teaching how to do stuff on it. And it's miserable. I just got done doing like 14 other days of traveling from roastery to roastery. I get home. I go see Avengers Endgame with Lexus. I just got home and we'll go see a movie. I get out of the movie theater and I have the CEO of this company saying, we need you back ASAP. Someone quit, something broken, get back, we need you, whatever it costs. I'm on the plane, I treat it like it's mine. I charge an arm and leg, but then there's the differences. I never left till it was done. Like was there for I think 12, 13, 14 hours. So that's kind of my personality for business. Now for Luminous, I'm willing to put that up to the next level. Anyone that's listening to this or knows me knows I would come help them in a heartbeat. I've been on roofs with Will at Tandem Roasters in Portland, Maine. We're putting roasters together. I've been with everyone. But for me, Luminous now, my story is last year, I'll tell you the extreme links. It's a little bit of a good thing because it shows an emotional part. I think a lot of people don't know the emotional stress it puts on a relationship and personally is Atlas was born in 2023. Basically, very hard birth for Lexus, me. We have Luminous going on. We're also roasting out of my friend's space, who we shared the roaster with, the Loring. And it was very hard because we weren't really making money. We were probably doing like 40, 50 orders every drop store. It was really hard because you're paying so much for costly green. But at that time, birth came, lots of complications. Luckily, knock on wood, everything's fine with Atlas and Lexus, but it was very hard for all of us. Then Then from there, my dog dies. I've had my dog my whole coffee career. Okay. And when you're working in the industry, you're working, people don't understand. Like for me, I was working 100 hours a week. No joke. No joke. 7 till like midnight every day. Till this moment, now I'm a little bit better. It's like 8 to 6 p.m. every day, 7 days a week. So it's like 70 hours a week, but I'm enjoying my time. The space is that way. But our dog died. I had to put him down for Luminous. If I would have stayed home, he would have had maybe a few good weeks, but he would have been in pain. I wouldn't be able to do Luminous and provide. And I had to do that sacrifice. And it's taken me a long time to kind of get over this whole thing, but these are the sacrifices you make. That's when people like, how hard do I push? Me and Lexus push our relationship to the breaking point. To anyone that has a relationship, I know a lot of friends here, it is really hard. But on a personal level, I'm built for it. I don't know why. I just built for the hard. I did this whole space, the painting, the lighting, all of it. I did this whole space while we were in pregnancy last year. I was here 8 till 3 in the morning almost every day. Doing the drop store, also roasting for my friend like 400 kilos a week. So I don't know. I think each person has the same struggle. It just shows different faces. It's not about how long you work, but for me, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy.
But this is why I think it's so important these stories are told and they're recognized, because behind every great thing that's going on, there's stories like that, and you're dealing with shit left, right, and center. Like, to deal with the birth of your first child is one thing, and then to have the complications, as well as like,
it was like, well, it was all within a 2 months period, all within a 2 month period, and Luminous was growing, and we were signing the lease for it, all that at the same time. I don't know. Like I said, I think that's why I do what I do, and I have such a push is I want industry people, baristas, back bar baristas. It's never greener on the other side. You could leave your shop and go to the newest one opening. It ain't working. You'll just tenure more experience and maybe some more trauma, but you will learn all the things you shouldn't do, because that's really what happens. But I want to share my transparency of all the wrongs and all these kind of things, so they can feel like, oh, there are people at this point and they're being transparent, because I could go find you 100 owners, roasters, whatever, and no one's going to tell you the things, because it's better to have unicorns and rainbows and fairy tales and coffee, but it isn't fun. It is really hard, but there are moments that make it worth it. And for me, the amount of people I've seen grow and excel and learn and be a part of like my journey and stuff, it makes it really worth it. And to be a part of this point, I still haven't taken this in. To be honest, I always said to myself, like in 2017, I was like, one day I'm going to have a Loring. And that's going to be the only powder coated one in the world. One is a F you to Loring, but two, because, that was it. But I don't enjoy it yet, because you keep, the toxic part comes out where you just have to keep going. And I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just situation. It's where you are. Some people are better off financially and more secure. Maybe they don't have to have that trait. But I think that is a little bit of the secret sauce to being in the industry is you know why you're in the industry. Like, there's a real mental fortitude of like, I'm about it. I want to help people. I want to push through it.
And despite your business being online, do you have a good relationship with your customers? Like, because I imagine, you probably got a lot of people that you sell to regularly, maybe they hit you up for brewing tips, then maybe they just leave the feedback. Your coffee's excellent. Like, what if you're an e-commerce business in one way, like what's your relationship like with your customers?
Yeah. So our Loomies, it is, I leave them voice messages. I do videos to them. Me and Lexus are your Instagram marketing. We have one member that helps out Dallas part-time, but it's just me and Lexus. So for me, it's really close. I always tell everyone how I'm talking to you right now is how I treat a random person. It's not to make you not feel special, but it's to make you understand, like, that's hospitality. You come into coffee. I was never a good hospitality bar person because, I used to operate $140,000 a month store where you'd make $6,000 USD in 3 hours. You know what I mean? You know, that real, like, you got 2 4-group linear PBs, you're fucking pumping it out and stuff like that. But, you know, so you couldn't be hospitality. There's no this romantic, let's talk about pour overs. We got to go. For Luminous, though, I always wanted to be, how do I mesh hospitality with e-commerce? And that's why we do it the way we do is I have to be at your home. Like, you can reach out to me. I have Loomies text me, call me on the regular. And these are people like your mom, your dad, like random people, and sometimes coffee people too. But I think that's because I give that space for it. It is not the best thing, but I try to treat them like they're in a shop or they're in our house. You know, right now we have a lot of tourists that are Loomies come to Vegas, and now that this is right down the strip. So every Saturday or Sunday or a few times a week, I become Willy Wonka. They come in, I do the tour. I'm working, and I show them everything and what we do, and I make them pour over an espresso. But I don't know. I just think that's the bare minimum you should do. Is that that's a bare minimum? Because think about this: 7 years ago, 8 years ago in coffee specialty, how far above the means did companies go to get you? From shipping you e-commerce, they give you freebies, free coffee, stuff like that. Go into the shops, they give you the best service ever. Now we're at a point now where I think people are getting lazy and they don't really appreciate the value and what we're doing and how hard it is. That it's just like, yeah, they'll come. I see people message me like, I'm starting an online business. I'll be like, this shit is hard. Because, in the reality of it, this is how I like to think of it, and I even tell it as a joke, for your e-commerce business, you're more likely to get attacked by a great white shark, walk out, get hit by a bus at the same time. Like no one's going to find you. You have to go out there and find them, but you have to do it organically. We don't do Instagram ads. We do a really bad job marketing. You may look at us and think it's great, but I know what we should be doing to get it, but I am not here to gather a bunch of random people. We're here to meet each Loomie and show them why we give this value. There's 100,000 roasters, you know what I mean? And shops, everyone's a roaster. So, if you put all those roasters in a blank bag and just did your hospitality behind it, who would they go to? It was just a brown paper bag, and you as the person, as the owner, were the one selling them. How many people would come to you? That's how I look at it, I have to go that extra mile, which is, I don't know. It can be hard some days.
And you're big on what I like about what you offer is that there seems to be a huge array of coffee. I don't understand people that drink exclusively washed coffee. If that's your thing, that's fine.
I understand it. I totally. Some people just want to be. Some people, I've learned one thing in business and consulting, especially high-end consulting, because everyone says they're consulting coffee, but there's a difference between a business owner that operates a multi-$10 million roastery, comes to you, pays you, and you charge them what you're really worth, and you excel at it. But the big thing is, basically, in a sense, I don't know how to word this without saying it weird. I don't know. I don't know how to say it in a nice way. Here, rephrase the question because I don't know how to say it in the best.
Well, going back to the question, when I've looked at your website, you've got co-fermented coffees, you've got purple Caturra or something, you've got some hydro wash from Ecuador. There's something there for kind of anyone who's interested in specialty coffee. And then, I think about your branding and Stay Extra and, the Slim Shady hairdo and all these things. And
I have a bad personality where I just change colors. I do things. I've had many haircuts. You can see me at a coffee event and you'll never notice me. I'm very hidden.
But this is all to say, Mason, you're a flavor, you're colorful, you're flavorful, and you're offering us as well. Yeah. So,
but I would think, like I said, I think I always tell people there's no such thing as bad coffee. There's just different business models. And that same goes for people. Some people really love washed, but I'll tell you this, they just maybe never found the right story or the right experience help them navigate into something. Co-ferments. Do I care for, like, we 25% of our business is co-ferments, and people think it's way higher, but I can show you the numbers transparently. Most of our stuff is honeys and wash, but most of it is actually honeys. There's a reason for that, but I don't know. I think you just need to find the right, maybe roaster, right person, right brew device to find that experience for you, because you don't want to be biased in coffee. The moment you are biased, you know nothing. I always tell people, the longer I'm in coffee, the less I know, because I stay unbiased. You know, if you sit there and you dive into one person's theory or something, it's all pocket science. Okay, you know why? You know your brew ratios on extraction. I do this shit at scale. Okay, there's such a different thing. Everything's easier and more accessible when you do it at a smaller amount. But when you're going with flavors and wash and naturals and co-ferments, you shouldn't let that dictate. Though we live in a huge swimming pool of thousands and thousands of roasters, not all have experience. And I always think the most well out roaster is the one with the best green buying program. I don't think people understand green buying programs really help dictate the roaster, because I've seen many roasters go from, like, you know, Juan Peña's barrel oak aged or something, and all they did was wash. And, you know, people were like, dang, this actually was really good. And then I've seen other roasters where they try to do everything, but they really do really well job and say washed. You know, it's because they get stuck in roast theories. Maybe they have production crews. Maybe maybe they're just like every other roaster, and it's just follow this curve line and use the same burner profile, or, you know, follow the curve, you know, and have no input. So I don't know. Green buying is the most valuable thing you can learn. And that comes down to for me, it's easy because who am I talking to? Me and Lexus, you know? There's no huge team of people. I don't have cafes. I know what I want to get, and I have the privilege to look for what I want. That's why we have that wide range. Price is not my problem. I put these coffees on blind tables. As long as you can show me transparently the numbers, and you fill out my transparency sheet, you're going to be in the Luminous program. But the only downside is I don't want to have 100 different producers. I want to have the most efficient portfolio of buying power, meaning as we grow, those people that we wanted to do, well, we're going to invest more financials into the producers we work with, but maybe get a little bit more out of what they're offering and in different ways with custom projects and stuff like that. But I will bring in other people. But I don't know. I try to stick with all. Like some weeks, yeah, I'm a washed person. Some weeks I'm a honey. Some weeks I'm super natural or co-ferment. I think it's stupid to say, you know, no co-ferments. You know what I mean? Like, or only washed. It's a dumb appreciation, and it makes you look like you're lost in the coffee.
To me, it's just like you're not living life as intended to be lived. You know what I mean? It's just like you're saying no to plenty of really nice opportunities, but and like to me, it's just a boring way to live. And look, if you choose to only lose you drink wash coffee, like I know it sounds like I am, but I'm not attacking you. But the way I see it, it's like I could never do that because, you know,
I get you. I think that's what people like. You need to try it all. Like, I don't know. I think of this, okay? I love washed coffees. But is every washed coffee anaerobic or anoxic? Do you know the difference of each one? Or are they all just naturals? You know, there's so much in it. Each culture has a different way of doing it, you know? Pulp natural, wet hold, all these different terminologies, and some black honey in, you know, Ethiopia. What is that? Is that natural? What is, like, there's so many different things that I think people, the younger people that get into this industry or the home connoisseur kind of gets led astray by the wrong voices that don't know what they're talking about. And that's one thing I will put my foot on. I know this stuff. I sit in this industry. I know what I'm talking about. I'll meet you there. We'll talk about it, and I'll prove these disbeliefs wrong. But co-ferments, you know, we started that in 2021, co-ferments. I think it was just really in the States, it was just us and Corvus, like doing big, just all co-ferments, like tons of buying of co-ferments. And, you know, that was great. I think that was also because of just the way with COVID, shipping, and also us in our, you know, it was very hard. But now I think co-ferments, I think people are desensitizing everyone. I like to look at that. When someone's doing something, I don't want to do it. That's how I look at it, because you're desensitizing it because, oh, great, you're filling the void for me. Thank you. I don't need to source this. You're doing it. Thank you. You're doing a great job. I'm going to go focus on another project. I'm into right now mocha varietals that are washed. Find me those. Have you tasted a mocha that's washed? Very highly doubt it. I'm trying to do that because it sounds fun. You know what I mean? And I'll take that risk and eat that money. And if it doesn't turn out good, well, let's go into instant coffee. They'll enjoy somewhere. We'll get that thing.
Well, that brings up what I was going to ask you about next, which was instant coffee, because it seems like something you're really big on. And I actually think that most people would be interested to know that actually in specialty coffee, instant's having a bit of a come up moment. I feel like it's not the.
Yeah, I think it is in a way, but I think it's in a bad sense. I think it's in a, I don't know. I have this belief. If you can sell 2 bags of coffee, you can sell 1 box of instant. But if you can't sell, if you're selling, it's like in a cafe. You have a drink you sell in a week. You got, your iced vanillas, and you sell 850. And then you have this one drink that sells less than 50. Okay, but it's the one that, is you're just doing it because every other cafe is doing it. Same with roasters. I think you shouldn't add things, product SKUs, till you're organic, till you're ready to do it. I wholeheartedly want everyone to have instant, but I don't think you should just add it to add, because it's a cost-effective thing. And if you're going to do it yourself, I wish the best for you. But you are not going to, it is not an endeavor if you're not willing to commit it, because either you're a really big company, say you're a big company and you do over a few hundred, like 200,000 e-commerce, like a big company, like some of the big brands you could just name off the top of your head. Okay, well, if they added instant, could they just go buy some garbage Harvest Right freeze dryers? No, that would be pointless, because it wouldn't match their reach, their capabilities. So they would have to invest tons of money, infrastructure, space, all this learning, and biggest of all, time to get it all set up, time before they could release it. So they're not going to do that. They're going to go find a co-packager. My friend Kent, who I would endear as the best person to ever start doing it at Viola. He started it up. He had really big ambitions. He got screwed over with some bad things. We both have the same opinion. Instant can be scalable. But I don't think everyone has to make it themselves. There are co-packagers out there, and sometimes it's better to have someone else do it. Me, I'm a Swiss Army knife. If I either make it or I ain't doing it. Right now we're about to buy 2 matcha mills to grind our own matcha. Why? I don't know, but I feel like it'd be fun. But instant is such a crazy endeavor because you have so many infrastructural key elements to it that you'll ruin part of your business that is more profitable, more efficient, easier to operate. And at the end of the day, the thing that you came into the business to do. I always say, let a roaster roast and let a barista. Don't try to make them do things that aren't it unless they want to be a part of it. But
they're two separate professions in a way, aren't they? Like being a masterful roaster requires sort of full-time dedication, as does being a masterful barista.
Yeah, I think you're using the masterful a little too easily, because not a lot of roasters actually know what they're doing, because there may be tons of resources, but I don't think what is missing in the industry is that person next to you to help navigate you. There's a real human element connection of helping someone grow. You can go watch all the videos if you want, Matt Parker, friend Lance, anyone. But if someone is not there to kind of be your sidekick, your mentor, you're not going to learn or become a master. So I don't think there's a lot of master roasters. I didn't learn shit from anyone. I spent all my money and time, pocket science, in learning instant coffee. There was no book. I've seen 2 people. I had some issues with other friend roasters about instant coffee, about how they were, some people said it wasn't scalable and other things. But I think instant coffee is scalable, but it's not to everyone. It needs to be committed. You really have to have the infrastructure for it. Right now, Luminous does a very good amount of instant. Think about this. We sell over 500 boxes a month of instant. We're about to get a bulk instant tint. But every bag of coffee that has ever left our space in 6 years, any bag, any order, any physical bag, has always had 1 free instant coffee.
Why do you do that?
How do you grow the demographic? How do you grow people to appreciate a bias stigma? Instant coffee is not to be better than your pour. It is to be there when other options aren't there, and it is to be appreciated in those moments. It's not there to compete. And I'm not going to do some like false marketing and say, hey, this is the best instant coffee. I hate doing that. You'll never see me do that. I could easily crush businesses by doing that bad way of gimmick marketing and just, but it's not the ethical way of doing it, I think. And it also doesn't proportionally help the consumer. So our goal is to just get it in their hands, let them learn. If they buy from us, they buy from us. If they buy from others, who cares? It helps everyone, because at the end of the day, I don't need it. Like, they're going to buy from someone else, but at least we're doing our part. Also, the experience, you know what I mean? Go up and above for that consumer. But instant coffee is a trendy thing right now, but I think it's a lot more social media kind of hyping it. And that's not a good sign, because I'll tell you this. I've seen people with millions of followers, and I do 10 times the sales they do. And we have no followers. We do no branding. So I like to think social media for coffee should only be used like a LinkedIn or for navigating, learning our community. But for perspective of knowing where the industry lies, it's just like unicorns. Like when a car company makes the one nice car, it may look like it's their whole business, but it's not. It's a small portion of it. But I'm hoping. Right now, we help many friends. We help our friends over at Dark Horse, Presta, Junto, House of Roots. Many roasters right now do instant coffee we make for them because, they're friends of mine and I want to help them, but I'm not here. There's always another manufacturer to do someone else's.
What one thing I want to ask you about, we've got about 10 minutes left before we have to wrap up, but one thing I definitely wanted to talk to you about before we leave is your transition of a lot of your profiles to the Typhoon roaster behind you. And in doing some reading about the Typhoon, it operates a lot differently to the way that other coffee roasters do, using convection. So could you explain that firstly to people listening to the podcast who, as best you can, that may not know what we're talking about, and then what the difference is using it?
Yeah, super easy. It's super easy to break down. So, okay, most people know how a drum works. It's a barbecue. Okay, there's open cut holes for airflow to come in. You probably have one motor that dictates all the airflow in one little panel. Well, that's a conduction roaster. There's convection in it. It really doesn't matter the math equation, but most of the air is coming from heat from conduction. Then we have Loring's, IMFs, newer Probats. These are all hybrids. A Loring is based off of Civets. A Civets roaster is a full fluid bed air roaster. The Typhoon, though, is the introduction of how airflow comes is direct heat, but through a fluid bed. So you have airflow keeping it up in the air at a more vigorous rate of motion, which gives more convection because of airflow. So that's why you see a lot of roasters right now talking about like rat tail at the end of their Loring cycle or whatever, more airflow. Because I always like to say in roasting, there's dead time. You know what I mean? Your equipment is your dead time. You roast on a Gießen, oh shit, you gotta have a really good in-between batch protocol, or you're roasting that dense Brazil, you better be ready to take it or it's crashing around, 350s. But with the Loring, the difference with this roaster is the burner dictates the airflow. On the Typhoon, the airflow is dictated by you controlling it. So you have your fan, which is your circ, which controls the whole infrastructure of the fluid bed. And then from there, you have heat. And you can control those by either direct temperature or just by a percentage. But in that whole thing, you have a mixer too. Having mixer speed at the same time gives you less convection or more conduction. Because if you slow it down, what happens? Beans don't move, so less convection is going through. So you can control it. But you have full control of it on this roaster. The scary thing is, this breaks down the disbeliefs, okay? I used to say, 8 years ago, you could roast faster. You don't need to roast. You're coming at your drum roaster onto your Loring or Stronghold like it's a drum roaster. You don't need to. They're made of different material. They have different paddle gauges. Most people are more worried about the front wall than, the sides. But, if you go to a Loring now, everyone is going faster now. There was an era where everyone was talking shit about Lorings, but I think it was just an uneducation about naturals. So everyone was, the word crashing, they would have a rate of rise that would crash, but it's impossible because the inlet would always be higher than the return. So you can't be in reality crashing because both numbers are above the beam mass. So it's impossible. But the problem was you need more airflow, and the Loring doesn't control that airflow. But you see roasters now on Lorings going, like for me, on my Loring 15 kg, this is a 15 kg Loring, this is a 10 kg Typhoon. On my 15 kg Loring, most of my roasts are between 650 to maybe 910 max. And that's in the 9 minutes.
That's minutes? Oh, yeah.
And this is a good retrospect because time doesn't dictate anything. This is what I try to teach roasters on. Now, what coffees am I buying? Most of my coffees are just fresh off stabilization. You know what I mean? Whole different world than most people. Like I have coffees that were just processed like a month ago. Like they're, maybe I need to let them sit longer before I start roasting. But the coffees can handle the heat, so I can control that. But now on my Typhoon, my big thing I've been really trying to be at is efficiency. How do I always be the roaster and also manage this business at scale without affecting its gross by hiring people without giving them the real opportunity of what they are and just not doing the proportional? Well, I need to make my time more efficient. So the Typhoon kind of was a risk. Ben and Esther, Ben was the only person that had a Typhoon at the time that I knew. This was 2020.
And you speak about Ben Morrow from Manhattan.
Coffee
roasters. So we vicariously have known each other, never met, but latte art bros. I was latte art bro when I started, like every older coffee person. But Ben was like, I had the Loring. I owned half of it with another friend, another roaster. And I was like, I really need to get out of it. And he was like, I saw the Typhoon and I was like, this is not the roaster I want to get. And this is like 2018. And then in 2023, he just got his and he was telling me about it. There's a lot of issues with it, like every company. There's a lot of issues with equipment, but the closer you are to people that know what they're talking about, the faster those issues can be rectified. So I took the risk and just bought one. And then as time went, Typhoon found out who I was, and we became a relationship. So I could help with sales in the US and do other stuff and kind of so I paid for this roaster, stuff like that, but it was a risk. But how do you learn more in coffee? How do you grow? I don't need this roaster. I roast like 150 kilos a week through our drop store to consumers. So it's a good amount, but I don't need another roaster. But if you want to be at that level of experience, you have to put some risk into it. So the Typhoon was a risk, but after months and months of wasting coffees, high expensive coffees that I've turned into instant, I enjoy it. It is the best experience. I'm roasting 4 minute to 5.5 minute roast, 10 kg. I could put out more quality stuff than I do on my Loring. It is a little bit more stressful because it's kind of like roasting on a Neptune or a Saturn, like big roasters. It's high stress, but in a short amount of time. So you got your.
What's the difference in flavor?
So Ben explained it to me like this when he first said, he's like, there's no taint. And I was like, what the fuck are you saying? And then I think, in my opinion, how different, sous vide, boiling, different ways of, cooking a steak or whatever, you can taste the heat source. You can kind of taste it. And I think the more experienced you are, you can kind of, some people will catch on to this. With the Loring, any roaster can make the same profile as any roaster. It's just how big of a batch, how you do things. That's a fact. Now, how you get there is a different story. But with the Typhoon, if you want to advance where we're going now, which is, less weight loss, lighter roast, more flavorful. Well, I've been experiencing it. It's very effervescent. It's very pinpoint. It's kind of like a deconstructed dish. Right. It is the next. You have to, but the problem is, don't let this justify just because anyone has a Typhoon or a roaster or a Praya that it's just going to be this experience. Not everyone has the same experience as the other person talking about it. I have a well-rounded experience. So when I say it's like a deconstructed dish, I definitely, through roasting from every roaster, from an Ambex to Neptune, Saturns, Laylas, any roaster you can think of, I've roasted on it. at scale with production roasters, teaching and stuff. The Typhoon is that scary spot of when I first roast on like a Merlin Loring. It feels scary, but the experiences and how you get there, who can tell me what I'm doing is wrong? I get to live unbiased again, away from the industry. The only difference is you have to execute on it. We haven't really sold coffees on there yet, still on the Loring, because you can't just switch because people have perception, and not everyone's here talking to me right now or enjoying coffees I make for them. So they could have a different perspective, biased perspective, without having someone to translate why their experience. But some of our coffees have now been on the Typhoon, and we did it some secretly, and people were fucking stoked. And then when I would tell them how fast I roasted it, and they looked for defects like potch marks. We don't roast that dark, so we're never going to get like potch marks or tipping and stuff like that. But uneven of color. I'd say the scary part about Loring or Typhoon right now is advanced processing techniques. Oh my God, roasting Robusta on this roaster was the scariest thing ever. There's some coffees on it. Because, okay, you know, Robustas, they enlarge so fast, but they also, moisture and CO2 comes out at different points, but it happens at a more fast rate. So when you get into, say, terminology of like some people know a rolling crack, you know, whatever people want to call their point, but it just happens. So I like people going to a Loring. I can always tell someone that just got to a Loring, bro. I can spot you like a mile away. And they're like in this 2018 era of roasting. And it's not because they don't know, it's just because they come from another roaster. But when you come on here, and I roast the Robusta on the Loring, it was so easy. It's like a Pacamara or a Honduras, you know. It's just a different experience. But on here, it was just like, it was taking off faster than expected. Because, you know, if you're roasting and you're focused within 5 minutes of roasting, everything's happening faster. And it's much more critical. And it's a little scary because also, you know, the coffees are, you know, expensive as shit in there. And I'm roasting at scale because you have to roast at scale with fluid beds. You can't do small weights with fluid beds, maybe strongholds, as long as you don't have an underpowered stronghold. It's just like a Loring. I always tell people, just because your roaster says it's minimum batch size 6 kilos. Like I have a friend, Adam from Unity Coffee. He was roasting on like a G120, and I was like, "Bro, you can roast." He was like telling me pounds. I can never do pounds, but I think it was like I was roasting 20 pounds on this 120, which is like, you know, 9 kilos, little under 9 kilos. And I was like, "You can do that. You just need to be really on your shit, and you need to have a really good batch. But you can roast small on it." But the Typhoon, because it's a fluid bed, it's much scarier to roast bigger batches because of the amount of airflow that's happening in there. So that's kind of my hard point right now is how do I get to scale down? But yeah, I don't know. That's Typhoon. If you want, I'd whip it on, but it's loud.
Well, I'm gonna have to come there. So if I do come through the US in October, November, like I'm hoping I can do, please have me at Luminous. I would love to do another podcast and just hang around. So
yeah, I feel like we missed a lot of things, but I think, you know, big thing is, you know, I think coffee, it's very important for owners to share their real experiences and not the little stuff to scare people away, but like the shit that is not fun, the shit that is hard, but then not just the bad, but how did you overcome it? You know, how do you overcome the struggles? You know, I always tell people that is a big thing is how do you overcome it, because no one's sharing that information. I think that's a good thing for your podcast. I like it a lot, what you're doing. I've been seeing them. Saw you at Jansen and stuff and a few others. I think it's a good perspective because I don't know, podcasts are weird in coffee.
Well, I kind of feel like with what I'm doing now, there's not really that side of coffee media. Like the one I've kind of wanted was never there when I was sort of working as a barista at other people's shops and having that dream of one day owning the coffee shop and hearing those perspectives. It wasn't there. And what I'm doing right now is not enormously popular, but if I keep going, then maybe one day it will be. And I'm hopeful. And it's like, this is not a money thing. I actually own a business. I've got a coffee shop. We sell coffee online. And we've got another coffee shop on the way. I kind of take away from my business so that I can do this because it's a very personal thing. Like it's something I'll die doing. So, but one day, and I think and I agree, it's important that we tell those stories and shine lights on, not every podcast that I do will resonate with everyone, but that's okay. But, I study journalism at university, and I'm very much interested in telling stories and all those sorts of things. So, it's a passion project for me. And I think, having that coffee media, like one day it will be really, really consumable, and hopefully because people like myself, Lisa Farr with Map It Forward, she does a lot of work as well, and there's other coffee podcasters out there that one day this will be a popular thing, and hopefully one day I can live to see that.
I think you will. I think people. I always tell people always tell me, "Hey, Mason, you go on your personal profile and you say crazy shit." Like I'm not like it's the right thing. Like everyone, every owner, every person, they just wouldn't say it because either it's a political thing on like industry political thing where it's like, oh, those companies won't like me. I won't be able to get free stuff. I don't know where I'll be in 2 years. I might need them for a job, blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you this, you're more likely to be transparent, but you have to be experienced with that transparency, how you do it. Me, I don't know what I'm doing. Most of the things I do harm it. I think these kind of podcasts are really cool because they're more formatted for people, but I think it's just the types of people you get. I always like to say that once you know one person in a certain part of the industry, there's a clique, which is like the worst thing in my opinion, but everyone knows everyone. And it's the most important one because it's like all the old heads. Because there is like a generation of really old heads, but they've kind of sold out in a sense. So they're gone. That prior 2000s, the early 2000s, late 90s, they're gone. They didn't share any of their information and they're kind of against the grain now. But this 2010 to 14 era, this generation of coffee people that are much more mature and older now, they've gone through a lot of the changes at a faster rate. So I feel like they're more suited to help tell the story for the potential people coming up. Because I think everyone wants to be their own boss. But I tell you this, if I could find one person that appreciated me and offered what I wanted without all this stress of Social Security, taxes, the liability, I would not have my own company. I would go be a part of someone's company. I do think that's something not enough people say. It's if you can find a team and they value you for your value of worth and costs, and stay on it, because that's that greener side that no one ever sees. And I think that's kind of what I've been trying to help people too, is like, not everyone should be in entrepreneurship mentally. It's not fun. I wake up to a $10,000 bill and I go to sleep with a $10,000 bill.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I went on someone else's podcast, Cole Terode and David Crosby's podcast, By the Drip. And they said, are you an entrepreneur? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm more like a specialty coffee Jehovah's Witness. Like I'm here knocking on doors, telling people, even though they don't want to, even though they don't want to hear it, I'll be there screaming and shouting the message. Like I'll be there at the park with the little stand. Like that's who I am. If business comes out of it, like I have to do my own business because it wouldn't work working for someone else. Like what I'm trying to tell the world, what I'm trying to do, I can't, similar to you, like there's not someone that can really provide that experience for me. Like me being in business is not like because I'm some hardcore entrepreneur. It's like because I have to. Like that. What else will I do? Like it would be much easier to just work for someone else and get the salary and take some vacation every year. But like it's actually a lot more sadistic to do what I'm doing. But like I guess you and me are the same in that way. I have to.
I think a lot of people, I think in our situation are that same way. I have no college degree, okay? I have been in coffee since 18. I am 34 now, okay? That's crazy that I've even got this way. But I always like to say, how many people with gray hair that started in the industry do you know? Not people that were musicians or some tech company or some bullshit. They're industry-grown people. I can name 5. I can name 5 people. And, but I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a fine line with coffee. You don't want to be entrepreneurship. I hate that shit. I hate a day in the life of a small business owner. I'll crash out. I think it's tacky because one, it's cool to show, but it's also, it sets you up for failure because at some point you will get big and everyone hates people that get big. It's reverse capitalism. Some people love it, but some people don't. But they'll be okay with like Starbucks being big, but they won't be okay with you getting like making like an extra 200,000 to your business a year, like, a gross to your business. Like that's like, oh, they're too big. They're everywhere now. It's like, bro, chill out. Like people need to scale. But I think how you walk about this way of doing it and how we go about it, it's very important to show it transparently. Just don't do it just to feed the industry cog. Like, you know what I mean? Don't do it to feed marketing and all this stuff. It won't work because it just won't. The only way things will work, you need to show your individuality. Why am I buying it? I can name roasters and baristas and green buyers that I love. I can name very few companies that I like, if that makes sense, because the people represent it. And not everyone has a great owners, or most companies are now like owned by like a bunch of people, a bunch of collectives and shit. So it's a weird thing. I don't know. And I live in a weird space where no one can tell me what to do. I can do whatever I want. I can say what I want. I just have to follow through with like my values and not do wrong. Like real quick, like being in Saudi Arabia, you know what I mean? That's something that, you can go watch a bunch of Discord Reddit bros like light up, but say it to someone's face. You don't understand culture. What am I going to do? Go colonize and say American coffee? No, bro. We meet people halfway. It's just like when they come in your cafe. You're meeting them halfway as who they are and what they like, and they're meeting you on what you're offering. And your job is, as a coffee person or as a human, is to appreciate everyone because it's just a weird thing. So that's how I treat coffee, is like how I would treat interactions with people, and you being an entrepreneur but not really being a Jehovah Witness or whatever, but like how you go about it is very important. And like I don't know, we get a lot of brunt of it sometimes for Luminous, but it's really the back end. It's not the industry people, and it's not the Loomies or the customers. It's like the random 0.001% of people lost in like their own like closed off circle of being biased. They're the washed people, but not in like washed, but in mindset. Like they don't appreciate every culture and every different thing. And for us, Luminous is to be a world brand. I want to be a world brand. I told that to Lex and everyone day one. My goal is to open one Lumi space in certain countries, not in the US. I want to be in Asia. I want to be in Europe. Because why? Our values and our core belief of who we are and what we're doing is a good thing for all of these people. And, we're a very progressive brand. So just think about that progressive kind of brand being in like the Middle East or Gulf countries. Like that's a hard push. You know what I mean? So it must mean there's a lot of people there with very thought after thing too. So I always like to say everyone's a human. You just don't know because you're not there. You're not talking to people, but right now, I don't know, Luminous is in a good spot and I'm just appreciating it. And being on this podcast is really cool because what it shows? I have time for this. That's crazy to me that I'm not doing something right now, though I want to do a bunch of things right now. I'm able to sit here and have this nice conversation with a coffee person.
Well, it's one we've been organizing for months now. So I asked you a few months ago, but look, I've got another person coming on in about T-minus 13 minutes. So
dang, who is it?
Jack Simpson, the Australian barista champion. So so he's a legend.
Yeah, no, yeah. So everyone in coffee, I always tell, and they know, I'm like an encyclopedia. I know where you worked. I knew about your freezing thing. I've seen that before. I know about it. You remember a thing called Manchester Archives?
Yes.
You remember?
Yes.
Were you part of that in the early days? Like
I sent him some coffee, but
it was a huge thing. I do freezing pretty tightly too. I've always loved freezing. I believe it's easily to scale, but I know about you and him too. But I like to say I'm like an encyclopedia. I just watch everything and just see. So one day if everyone like this goes away, I could write a great story on coffee. It's cool to see everyone kind of just grow. It's so weird. Like looking at Ben from where he is from Manhattan, though we're not friends or close or met in person, and seeing people through different countries, through social media and stuff, and seeing them, it's such a crazy feeling. But being
Well, this is one of the better parts of it. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Being
for
in
sure.
like tight like that's crazy.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for coming on, Mason. So Mason Salisbury, Luminous Coffee. If you want to get some Luminous Coffee, is it luminous.coffee? Is that their website?
Yeah, luminous.coffee, dropstore.coffee. Love luminous.coffee, but Fridays only. But yeah.
Fridays, it's like Pokemon Silver version. You can only catch a Lapras on Friday. So
Me and Alexis just are getting into Pokemon hardcore again. I used to be hardcore when I was younger, and I was just like, you know what? I have a kid now. I need to enjoy my nostalgic time again.
yeah, no, I'm so about Pokemon at the moment. I'm playing Legends Arceus, but this is a whole nother conversation. But I'm gonna get the Switch 2. I'm gonna get Legends ZA. I love Pokemon, if you didn't already know. All right, well, Mason, that just about wraps up us for today. But I'll see you in America. I'll see you in the USA.
You'll see me sooner than later, I have a feeling.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. I'm excited, but looking forward to releasing this podcast. Thanks so much for your time, man.
No, you're welcome, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it taking up your time. It looks like we went over by a lot.
Oh, mate, no, it's good. This is good content for everyone. All right, well, that's it, everyone. Hooroo.